Welcome to Sand Pebbles. The purpose of this series is to make philosophy accessible and understandable to the working public. The 20th century was an exciting time for scientists and philosophers. Batting cleanup here, I just want to cover a couple of items that are important basics that developed in the 20th century and that I did not get a chance to cover in the prior episodes. First, I'd like to emphasize that by pointing out that reason seems to be incapable of reaching non-pragmatic truths, absolute truths. I'm not saying that the working man needs to abandon logic and reason as a source of truth and go to mysticism or some kind of irrational source for truth. What philosophers are saying is that reason needs imagination and creativity to do its job in order to reach truth. Some of you hopefully are familiar, if not, you should be familiar with the American writer Tim O'Brien, who writes fictions about his experience in the Vietnam War instead of histories. And he does that, and his theory of truth is that when he writes a history, when he tells people stories about what actually happens, they always seem to be incomplete. They don't express either his experience, the experience of his comrades, nor the overall experience in Vietnam. But when he writes a fiction, he gets closer to the truth by trying to take the reality that he knows happened, that he experienced, and puts it in the fictional story. He's able to express the truth better for others. And the situation seems to be true with both logic and reason. At the same time, the basic axioms of logic, the principles of identity, of contradiction, and of the excluded middle remain the basics, are the axioms here and are the axioms in all possible worlds. A is always equal to A. Something cannot be and not be at the same time. If you reject those principles, then you've answered the question that's the subject matter of these episodes. Is there truth? Does truth matter? If you reject those principles, the answer is there is no truth, and whatever's out there doesn't matter. And that's possible. You can do that. There's plenty of philosophers, and as I discussed earlier, physicists who now claim that's what we have to do. But when you do that, you have no basis to argue that reason, being rational, is better than being irrational. They essentially use the same technique. The power they achieve may be different quantitatively, but are no different qualitatively. I mean, the irrational man who lives in a world where his will dominates anything as an individual is much more powerful than any rational man who tries to achieve some type of rational truth. As the saying goes, it's much better to rule in hell than it is to serve in heaven. Another 20th century development is the elimination of the difference between analytic truth and synthetic truth. Philosophers usually held that analytic truths, such as the statement, all bachelors are unmarried men, though they may be absolute truths, are actually meaningless and worthless, since they are actually true just by definition. Once you define bachelor, it's necessarily true that a bachelor is an unmarried man. Many philosophers argued that mathematics were analytic truths that were actually meaningless in themselves. Synthetic truths were truths that required some kind of a physical experimentation or experience, such as a statement, all bachelors are happy. If that statement is true, it's not true in itself. It's true because someone went out there and asked all bachelors and they got answers. It's a synthetic truth. But with the 20th century, primarily from the work of a philosopher named Willard von Quine, now hold that distinction is no longer valid. All statements seem to be what he called part of a fabric of reality. Even the statement, all bachelors are unmarried men, required certain experience with a certain culture, with a certain language that uses those terms in certain ways. If you change any of these threads in the fabric, the whole fabric is either weakened or needs to be changed in order to be maintained. A recent example of this is the recent development of gay marriage in the U.S. and in many other places. Just a short while ago, saying that the married couple consists of a man and a woman would have been the same as all bachelors are unmarried, would have been considered analytic truths. But as we now see, that is not true and really never was true. It depends on experience of the use of the language in a particular culture.